Welcome to the Invested Dads Podcast, simplifying financial topics so that you can take action and make your financial situation better. Helping you to understand the current world of financial planning and investments, here are your hosts, Josh Robb and Austin Wilson.
79 down. This is a red credit score. All right. Hey. Welcome back to the Invested Dads Podcast, a podcast where we take you on a journey to better your financial future. Today, Josh, we are going to be talking about your credit score.
Oh, good. I've been wanting to know what my number is. I'm glad we're going to bring up my credit score.
Okay, well, not necessarily your credit score, Josh, but credit scores in general. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be the most exciting episode ever.
You know, when I can't go to sleep at night, I count credit scores, so it's useful.
So I guess let's take a 30,000 feet approach.
Yes.
At first. So what is credit? We've kind of hit on this a couple times, hit in between a couple episodes over the course of this year. But what is credit, Josh?
Yeah. So think of credit card. It's
I'm going to give you credit for doing something.
Yes. Credit being it's lending or borrowing, it's the ability or your obligation that you can cover something. So a credit card, you are borrowing on credit, so someone is in a sense on your behalf buying something for you.
They're giving you credit
with the promise of paying it back.
Yep.
And so a credit report is looking at your ability, or for the people that maybe are the ones going to be the ones lending to you, your ability to sustain that debt load that they're going to offer you.
Yeah, and credit is not free, generally speaking. So there is a charge associated with that, and that is in the form of interest.
Yes.
So when you borrow because you're not paying for something out of your own pocket and you're using credit to do so, there is a risk associated with that the lender is taking on that risk. So they are going to be compensated in the form of interest.
Yes. And the more risk there is, the more interest you'll probably have to pay.
Correct. So let's dig down a little deeper now,
Yep.
30,000 feet down to 10,000 feet. So what is a credit score? Well, in short, it's a number.
Yes.
We like numbers.
It's a score.
It's a score. I like scores.
Yeah.
So it's a number between 300 and 850 that shows a borrower's credit worthiness. Yes. So, like many things in life, higher is better.
Not golf.
This is not golf. This is the opposite of golf. Higher is better here. And the most common is really a score that was created by the Fair Isaac Corporation, also known as
FICO.
You gotta love
Sounds
acting.
More like a dog name, right?
Like, come here, FICO. There is
name a dog.
There is totally a dog in America named FICO. Totally is. It's a nerdy bank guy's dog, but definitely is. And there are three major credit reporting agencies. Those are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So these all record, they calculate, they retain these scores for individuals, and the scores may differ slightly between the three, but they'll be in the ballpark generally for everyone.
They all do a little bit different calculation on how they attribute or give weighting to different things. But yeah, you're right. If you score, let's say, a 700 on one, you maybe a 690 or 680 or a 710. You'll be in the range. You'll be close.
So you mentioned my favorite word, calculate. So calculate. How are credit scores calculated? And we'll link a great article from Investopedia in the show notes. But there are 5 components to credit score calculation. Number 1, payment history is the biggest component of credit score calculation. And that's really on-time payments versus late payments. You get that big 35% of the score is calculated favorably for you from a series and a history of on-time payments, and unfavorably for you if you have a history or series of late payments or missed payments or whatever. That's not good.
Yep. Now, along with that too, you need history to have a credit score.
We're getting there.
Yes.
So we'll get there.
All right.
But total amount owed is number 2. So like credit utilization. So really that's about, Josh, say you have a couple different credit lines, different credit cards, credit accounts, home equity line, who knows what that may be. And you have $50,000 of available credit. If you currently have outstanding balances of 40, then you've used 80% of your credit. Actually, that'd be a lot.
Yes.
But generally speaking, lower is better on the credit utilization, and we kind of talked about that in our mortgage discussion that we had. But that is 30% of your credit score is calculated from credit utilization. So generally speaking, that should be lower if you want your score to be higher. Now, what you had talked about just a second ago, length of credit history is a 15% component of your credit score. And yes, you have to have some form of credit history to have a credit score. And generally speaking, the longer your credit has been established, the longer you've been utilizing credit through various different means or whatever over the years, the less risky you are. And the longer those accounts have been open. So if you've been an American Express card holder since 1981, you're probably that is
consistent payment history.
Exactly.
On time,
that's going to really help.
Yeah.
That's going to really help.
So looking at those two, history between the length and the actual what you did, that's 50% of how they make up that score.
Yes. Yeah, payments and length.
It's
that
50%.
is a lot.
That's crazy.
Next up is another, so that was 15%, like we said, length of credit history. Next up, number 4 is type of credit. So there's 2 types of credit. There's installment credit. So like you're making an installment payment towards an overall asset or whatever. So that's like a car loan, like a mortgage, those kind of things. And then you've got revolving credit, which is like a credit card. So where it's just replenished after payments and stuff like that. So those are 2 different types of credit. That's 10%. Then, and generally speaking, if there's a hard asset backing things, like an installment credit, rates are going to be lower. They're a little less risky because they can always go back on them and take them and stuff like that. So I would say that the more proportion of your credit that is leaned towards that, like a mortgage, is going to be viewed as less risky and help your credit score.
Which is why I could get maybe a mortgage for $100,000, but my credit card's not going to give me a $100,000 limit because there's a lot more risk involved if someone does that.
Exactly.
Because there's no asset tied to collecting that.
Correct. And then the final 10% is new credit. So that's like new accounts, new applications for accounts, those kind of things. Really, the less frequent that is, the better.
So
although
if I all of a sudden have a bunch of people checking my credit score for
they'll
a
ding
loan,
you.
that might hurt me.
Yes, exactly. So that is how they're calculated. But we talked about how that range, there's a broad range of numbers that can be, and there's a cool Motley Fool visual that shows this, and we'll link that in the show notes as well. But generally speaking, the range, like we said, is 300 to 850. So I have the breakout of what those are. So we'll start at the bottom.
Okay.
The lower is not as good.
Right.
We want high numbers.
Yeah, you want a high score.
But the worst you can be is 300 on a credit score. So that's like little to no credit, no history, bad missed payments, pretty much not good.
Not looking good.
But 300 to 579, that's a pretty big range. That is 16% of people in America have those scores. The next, and that's considered relatively poor. So then you go up a notch to fair. Fair is 580 to 669. That is another 18%. Then you go up to good, and this is where, these are increasing percentages too. So good, 670 to 739. That's 21% of the population. Very good credit scores, a 740 to a 799. 25% of the population. And then to be excellent, it actually does go down in percentages. Only 20% of people have an over 800. So 800 to 850 are really the best credit scores out there. So those are the ranges there.
So 2/3 of the U.S. population lands in good or better, right? Good
Correct.
or higher scoring.
Exactly.
So 2/3 of the population lands at least at the good spot or higher.
And generally speaking, if you think of 640 or so as kind of a general breaking point of where you're okay. Prime to subprime is that like 640-ish range, so right below good, and you can do and better is good. So how does your credit score affect your borrowing?
Yeah. So if I'm in the good, very good, excellent, the higher up I go, the more I've proven my ability to take that on in a reasonable way and pay it off consistently. So that means I am less of a risk to the people that may consider lending to me. And so if I have a high score, let's say I'm, 750 or 760 in the very good category, I'll get a better rate than somebody who's in the 670, in the lower. So I will be able to access more credit with a higher score.
Yeah, and specifically for banks, if they see you walk in the door and you're trying to get a mortgage or whatever, they're going to be very happy to loan you money if your score's, especially like north of 700.
Yes.
They'll say, "Oh, thank you.
You got it. Come on in. Here's a good rate."
It's really low risk for us. We're going to give you what you want, and you're not going to have that much interest. Now, if you come in at under 640 or so, that's considered what's called subprime, which it's not a sub ordered from Amazon Prime.
Nope.
Which I should not. I'm always hungry, I should not do this recording when I'm hungry because
No,
I would eat a
always
sub.
think about food.
Woo! And if you could get that Prime delivered,
2 days though.
it's not
It's
fresh.
stale.
I don't want
No.
that. So anyway, subprime, less than 640, you're going to get higher rates because that lender
There's
is
risk.
They're going to be less apt to maybe they'll be okay to loan to you, but they will charge you for
Yeah,
it. A
you'll
little
pay
extra.
for it.
So Josh, this is like super exciting.
Everyone loves credit scores.
It's what I woke up this morning wanting to talk about. But in honor of Disney Plus turning 1 year old
1 year
this
old.
month,
That's right.
we are going to do a dad joke of the week that's going to make
Oh,
you
boy.
laugh.
I'm ready.
All right.
ready.
So Josh, why is Tinkerbell always in the air?
Why is Tinkerbell in the air? I'm not sure. Why?
Because she never lands.
Neverland. Love it. Love it.
Woo! So, yes, Disney Plus, 1 year old. I can't believe it. I love me some Disney Plus.
Good.
That
The
Marvel.
Mandalorian?
Haven't watched
Oh,
it
man.
yet. But I heard there
gotta
was a
watch
whole outcry about Baby Yoda eating the
I haven't
eggs.
got that far yet, so
Oh, don't want to ruin it for you.
I heard, but I haven't watched.
It
But-
sounds interesting.
Yeah.
But I've seen previews. Whenever I get on Disney Plus, they have like little preview on
You
the
gotta
thing.
watch-
It
the first season was good.
Mandalorian looks really, really
First season
good.
was good.
So yeah, Disney Plus, 1 year
They're
old.
coming out with all the Christmas stuff now. So Home Alone 2 is on there. They have Prep and Landing, which is a Disney movie that we had the DVD for, and it wasn't there last year.
Really?
And I was surprised because I had to double check, and I looked. It is a Disney movie, and I thought, why isn't it there? And they probably had an outstanding deal with some other streaming network or whatever. But it's there now, which is if you haven't seen those are pretty good too.
I still want to watch Hamilton too.
Oh yeah,
The musical.
I've not seen that. Yeah.
I've heard amazing things. I've heard it's great, but I have yet to sit down and watch it. And why not? What am I waiting for? Well, it's because I'm still working through the Marvel movies.
Oh, that's true.
So
That's
tonight,
more important.
yeah.
More
So
important.
tonight, my brother-in-law and my sister and their little one come over once a week. We watch a movie tonight,
Where you at?
which I feel like we probably talk about this pretty frequently on
I don't
here.
know which one you're on right now, though.
We just
You did
watched
this
Spider-Man Homecoming.
Okay.
So we're watching, which was interesting.
Yeah.
So we're watching, I think, Thor Ragnarok,
Oh, that's one of my
which
favorites.
I've
It's
never
hilarious.
seen. It's hilarious.
Oh man, it's a good one.
So my wife Jenna has one of her favorite characters in all of the Marvel series is Loki.
Okay. He's in it.
And yeah, so the last Thor movie kind of left you hanging where Loki impersonated Odin and
On
pretty
the
much
throne. On
pretty
the
much
throne,
said I love
yeah.
you. Thank you for doing what you did, son. You did good to Thor. What Thor didn't know it was Loki, but
Yep.
so now
Spoiler.
yeah.
For anybody that hasn't known that.
Yeah, for anyone that does
Sorry.
Sorry guys.
Sorry, the movie's
So-
been out for
so
4
yeah.
years, but
Yeah.
sorry.
You're missing out. Well, and I just watched it for the first time. But yeah, so that's where we're on is Thor
Oh,
Ragnarok.
you're gonna love
so,
Thor Ragnarok.
and
It's
we're
hilarious.
like getting close to the end too. So
Yeah,
it's
you're
like
in final stretch. There.
we've got like Ant-Man and the Wasp. We've got Infinity War and Endgame. There's not a
Another
whole
Star
lot.
Wars or another
There's
Spider-Man.
no Star Wars
Spider-Man in
in
there.
that. Yeah, there is another Spider-Man. So anyway, sidebar, Disney Plus, 1 year old. We pretty much use it a lot.
It's
we love
good.
it.
Kids love it.
Kids love it too. So I guess some general points we should probably make is what makes your credit score go up and down, Josh?
That's a good question. Up. It's
Up
a good
is good.
one.
We want
is
good. Up is
So
good.
The things you could do to improve your credit score. One, and this is big because if you think back to when Austin was giving you the rankings of the percentages of how it affects your score, how it's calculated. So up, the big thing is on-time payments.
Make them.
All right. The better you can have on-time payments, it's huge because that's 35% of that score
Exactly.
ranking. So on-time, consistent payments is
Yep.
huge. Low utilization, so that means if you have $50,000 of available credit,
Don't use it all.
use 5, use 10. You use as little as possible. Or in other words, pay down some of that debt so you have less utilization.
Yep.
Have less inquiries. So anytime someone checks your credit score, it can affect it. Now, there's two ways of checking it. If they do a credit check on you from like a job standpoint, they're not accessing the full thing, so that doesn't affect you. But if you're going in to say, hey, I'm going to buy a refrigerator, and they check your credit, that's going to have a ding on it.
Right.
I'm going to go buy a car, and they're going to check your credit.
Yep.
The full check on your score can have an impact. So just only do it if you're serious about needing it.
Yep.
Don't just go around willy-nilly having people check your score. Like if you're really proud of it, I mean, just don't, hey, check my score.
Right.
No, it's just,
I
don't
want
do
to see it.
And then cleaning up old accounts. So if you have open credit, especially like credit cards, that affects it because the utilization comes to that. Again, you're accessing, because let's say you have a credit card that has a $2,000 credit limit, but you don't use it. That's still $2,000 available
which is
of
good.
your credit.
Yeah.
But if you're not utilizing it,
Then
you
it's
need to close that out of there.
No, you do not.
You don't want to close it out of there?
You don't want to close it out of there. Trick question.
I want to close it out
You
of
do
there.
not want to close it out of there because closed accounts also ding you, and length of credit is a very important.
Oh.
So you actually
I want to close it out.
it'll close on its own eventually.
Yes, I want it gone.
But yes, I know. I feel the same way, and
I want it
I've
gone.
done some research into this. But yes, you
I
leave.
see what you're saying.
Leave it open with
Especially
zero
your old,
balance.
Your old ones, like your old ones for the credit.
Because you're if you're especially if you opened up some credit cards when you got out of college,
Yes.
and you don't really use those ones anymore.
Okay. So
If you those are your oldest credit, so
Yeah.
you should not close those.
I don't like those.
They will close them themselves eventually. So.
I don't even like that bank
That
anymore.
was a trick question.
It was a trick question.
Okay, so things not to do,
Don't do
things
that.
that make your credit card go
Listen to
down.
Josh.
Down is bad. Yeah, don't close your credit cards.
Don't, even though you want to.
Even though you want to.
I tell you to.
Okay, do not. I'm going to say it again. Do not. One more time. Do not make late payments. Do not miss payments. And we're going to get to ways to help your credit, but don't do that ever. There's really with automatic payments, there's really no excuse anymore.
Yes.
So don't ever do that. Do not use all your credit or more than all your credit, which I don't think you can. Don't use it. Don't use it all.
Yes.
That's bad. Don't go get your credit score checked all the time, and don't open and close accounts every day.
Yeah.
Because that affects your new accounts, the new inquiries, and your length of credit. So things not to do, also right there.
Yep.
So how to improve your credit score? Well, this kind of goes without saying, but we just talked about it. Do pay your bills on time.
Yep.
Do pay them on time. And use automatic recurring payments.
Oh, it's huge.
It is so easy to
nice.
set up, too. You get a new credit card, the first thing you do is to set up automatic recurring payments. And in a perfect world, automatic recurring payments for the statement balance.
Yes, full balance.
Because you're not paying any interest, and cha-ching, you
Yep.
just get rewards. Which, see our credit card episode if you're interested in learning about our thoughts on credit cards. But yes, set up recurring payments. And then, if your credit utilization is too high, you can ask your lenders to increase your credit limits.
Yeah.
So even if your utilization you keep about the same in dollars, if you have more credit available, then your percentage goes down, which also helps your score. So that's another way to do that. Don't close accounts. That will shorten your credit history.
I still want to close the account.
I know it's so counterintuitive, but you should not do that.
And it comes back to, we're talking about how to keep your score up, right? When I'm talking financial planning as a financial advisor, sometimes closing accounts to remove that has that temptation
Yes.
to overspend.
Different sides of the same.
Totally
yeah.
different, which is, again, why I keep coming back to,
wanna
man,
do
when I'm
it.
talking to people, it's get rid of some of those cards that are just hurting you.
Yeah.
But you're right. From a credit standpoint,
Correct.
that makes sense.
Correct.
Still hard.
And you may be able to wean it down
Yes.
over time.
Yeah. The other ones.
Just don't do them all at
probably-
once
yeah,
or whatever.
If you have ones that are more recent that you don't use, or for instance, let's say go back to refrigerator, right? You go there and you open a store credit. You're not going to use that store again. Get rid of that because it's just floating out there for no reason.
Do keep in mind that anytime you close a
It
account,
counts, yeah.
it takes your total credit down.
Yes.
So then your utilization, all things equal,
Yep.
will go up.
We'll talk to fraud in a minute. That's the other reason.
Exactly.
Why I hate open ones you don't pay attention to.
Another thing to improve your credit score is don't be afraid to talk to your lenders.
Yeah.
Because if you have questions or whatever, it's amazing what some of these companies can do if you just talk to them. So give them a call. And then I haven't used this, and I'm not sponsored by this at all, but there's a new service I heard about through Experian called Experian Boost, where they allow you, they link other recurring payments like utilities and phone bills and stuff like that. That's really not on credit, but they link it
shows
to
your payment history.
Yeah, they link it to show your payment history, and it can supposedly help improve your credit score for free. So that could be worth looking into. So you had mentioned this, but checking credit's important.
Yes.
But
Pay
not.
attention.
But how and when should you check your credit reports?
Yeah, really, I think hourly makes a lot of sense. Just
I've checked mine
be
5
around
times
it.
today.
That's right. Just scroll across your screen if you could put an
That's
hour
right.
there. No, really, honestly, as we talked about, you checking your credit score doesn't move it, all right? You asking for your credit score does it. Like we talked about having other people check your credit when they're looking for loans and stuff. You checking it doesn't affect it. So don't think, if I look at it,
Right.
it's going down.
Yeah.
But there's really no point in checking it daily or hourly, like I was joking, because it's not going to change. That's the thing about credit. It's not there.
Yeah.
But you should check it 2 times. One, once a year, they allow you for free
Yep.
to check your credit report. All three places allow you annually to get a credit report for free and see where it's at. Two, if you know you're going to need it, that would be a good time to use that annual one.
Yep.
Or if you've already used it and you're just worried about making sure everything's cleaned up before, let's say I'm going to go get a home loan and I want to really make sure I get the best deal, it'd probably be worth even paying for another credit report if you're been far enough out to just make sure everything's in line and there's nothing there you don't know about. So you can go to the FTC. They are the ones that monitor all the
Federal Trade Commission.
Federal Trade Commission. They're cool people. They set up a website, annualcreditreport.com. That's the only one that's actually like, I don't want to say endorsed, but that's the one that they send you to get your free credit report. And we'll send a link in the show notes for that. The Federal Trade Commission actually has a decent information about that, so we'll link that as well. Just that's a spot to go from the government to give you some information you can trust because they're not trying to sell you anything.
Correct.
Right? They're not a credit monitor trying to get you to sign up for their business or anything. And the annualcreditreport.com is where they send you to for that.
So alternatively, if you want a little bit more real-time, less formal process of doing that, some personal finance companies, like I'm thinking of credit card companies, or like if you use Mint or whatever, your budgeting app or whatever, through which is an Intuit company, like they will show you your quote-unquote real-time credit score, and it's probably not perfect, but it's dang close.
Yep.
And it can show you that. So like I have a Capital One credit card, and they have an app, a specific app separate from their credit card app called CreditWise. And you can, with your same login from your credit card, you just use your thumb or whatever. You log in and you can see your credit score, which is great. And you can see all of the outstanding credit lines. You can see inquiries and everything. So it's kind of handy. And that's if you don't want to get the official, like if you're in between getting the report once a year or whatever, it's a great way to just make sure you're kind of cleaned up. So fraud is...
So why are you checking your report?
We should be checking our report for things like fraud.
Yes.
Because people steal identities, and fraud happens rampantly, especially in the United States.
Yes.
So...
And what you don't want is to get a letter in the mail saying, hey, here's this credit card that has $10,000 on it that you haven't paid anything on.
And you're like,
we're
it
collecting.
wasn't
You're like,
me.
I didn't have a credit card. And so that's what you're checking for, is making sure there's no open line of credit that you did not establish.
Exactly. So if you notice something funky when you're looking at your credit report, first of all, look into it, get a hold of the lender and talk to them about it and make sure that they can take care of it, because you're not liable for credit that's not yours.
Right.
So if it is identity theft, there are protections in place that you are not
But it's a
responsible.
pain.
But it's a pain, and it can
score.
affect your credit score. So look into it, take care of it with the lender, take care of it with the credit union or the credit provider that it's showing up on.
You may have to contact the police. I mean, there are possible crimes that you have to report and go through that process.
Exactly. So one thing that those credit reporting agencies can do is they can put like additional fraud protection on your account. If you've noticed funky things happening, you got it taken care of. It's great. It looks clean now. Things are good. They can put additional protections for specified periods of time on your account to have them, if you apply for a new loan, then there's an extra step of protection where they have to verify your identity and all this other stuff. So that is one thing that you can do. You can also think about freezing your credit. So what are some instances maybe where you would think about freezing your credit? And what is that, I guess?
So freezing your credit puts a block that no new...
It's like where you put all your credit cards in the freezer?
Right in the freezer. No new credit can be opened. And so it essentially...
Or closed, I guess.
Yeah, no activity can happen on your open credit. And so what it does is it eliminates the opportunity for someone to cause fraud on your credit. Now, it's important to note that when you do that, they're going to mail you a code, and that's how you unfreeze it. If you lose that code, you're in a lot of trouble. Yeah. And so you just got to be very careful.
Put it in the freezer.
Yeah, put it somewhere safe. So the idea there is, though, it protects you so that you will be sure that nothing's going to happen. So if someone went and applied for credit, even if it's you will not be approved. You will not be able to get it because it's frozen. And then, like you mentioned, is you could put more of an alert on there, which doesn't stop it, but it adds one layer of protection where they either call you or text you or some way of confirming that it's you doing it. So
I guess a couple age groups that may be beneficial for a credit freeze, because they maybe have no use for credit, is A,
Kids and adults. Kids and really old people.
Yeah, kids, they have no use for credit, but they have a social security number, so I guess in theory could have fraud happen.
Yes.
So probably not a bad idea to think about freezing your kids' credit, because that would be...
Don't lose the number, though, so they can, when they're ready to get credit, they can have it.
Alternatively, the elderly, because they are the most susceptible to fraud. Think about all of those scam calls. They're the ones that typically are most susceptible to that. So that is unfortunate, but maybe if you're paying cash for your way through life as an elderly person, great. You do not really need credit. Lock it up and leave it. Don't lose your paper.
Yes.
It's like your Bitcoin code or whatever. Like if you lose it, you're just done.
Yeah. I just think of I mean the idea there is there's things in place. The alerts to me are a lot better of an option because
I agree.
It usually lasts for about 6 months or so. So you have to renew, and you can renew it.
Yeah, I think you can keep it up to like 7 years in some instances.
Yep, and especially if you had issues, they can extend it longer without you have to renew it. But the idea there is it's not permanent, but it does help put an extra layer on.
True.
And usually it's free or relatively cheap to do.
Yeah.
So
let's wrap it up.
By the way, Jess, our colleague, did in the Everyday Advisor. She did a article
on freezing your credit.
Yeah. So if you're interested in freezing your credit, she did a great article on that.
We'll link that in the show notes. So, Josh, who needs a good credit score?
No one.
No one.
No.
Well, actually, that's the second part of my answer is who doesn't need a good credit score. So who does not need a good credit score is rich royalty who don't need to worry about their finances. So AKA probably not you and not us. So that's who does not care about their credit score. But who does? Anyone else.
Yeah. And it really just depends on where you're at in life. So if you own a house, have a credit card if you want one, and have a car you like, and aren't planning on getting anything new, you don't need a credit score. But if you think you're ever going to need somebody to loan you money, you're going to want a credit score.
In any way, shape, or form.
In any way, shape, or form. So, and it is out there. Some jobs, too, depending on what industry you're in, also take a look at that as well. So, you're right. Most people need to at least be aware of their credit score and do the best they can to get it in the, good to excellent type of area.
Yeah, I would say that the most, acceptable form of debt from a financial advisor perspective is probably a low fixed rate mortgage. Mm-hmm. Nice. And you're going to need a good credit score to get a good rate on that.
Yes.
So even if you're extremely conservative in the way you run your finances and avoid debt like it's the plague, you don't have car payments, you don't have credit cards, housing is expensive. And great for you if you have enough cash to go buy a house, but most people really aren't in that situation. So monitoring your credit and having good credit is probably important in that way.
If you plan on living in your parents' basement, though, and never owning anything, you may not need credit either.
Man,
so it's not royalty or rich, but
I didn't really moocher.
Yes,
I didn't really take that. I need to talk to my parents about that. Is it too late?
Move back.
Like I got married. I got married and have a 3-year-old.
That's right.
Can I move back in? So, as always, check out our free gift to you. It's a brief list of 8 principles of timeless investing. These are overarching investment themes meant to keep you on track to meet your financial goals. It's a wonderful PDF. It's free. It's on our website. So check that out. Josh, how can people help us to continue to grow this podcast and help people week after week?
Yeah, subscribe. That's the big one. That way you get an alert or it automatically downloads to whatever you use to listen to the podcast. Leave us a review, especially on the Apple Podcast website. That's where we get ranked, and so more people can find us, and we can help more people. If you have any great ideas or have questions about freezing your credit or anything like that, email us at hello@theinvesteddads.com. We'd love to hear from you. And then finally, if you know somebody who is new to credit or trying to figure out what they need to do, and you think this episode would help, make sure you share it with them.
All right. Well, until next Thursday, thank you, and have a great week.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Invested Dads podcast. This episode has ended, but your journey towards a better financial future doesn't have to. Head over to theinvesteddads.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and we had a positive impact on your life, leave us a review, click subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks and Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.